Hello, my name is Henry Emphrey, and in this video, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite game development tools, and I'm going to talk about why I use some of them. I just want to recognize some of my game development tools that have contributed towards my evolution as a game developer. There are tool sets that I attest to, and I just want to talk about them because they got me going on my journey as a game developer. So the first one that I would like to talk about is Godot. Now, it seemed like somebody thought of everything when they made Godot. In Godot, you could do everything from in-house animation effects to making in-house assets with this program. I also like the fact that in Godot, I can make 2D and 3D games, as sometimes I like to make 2D games and sometimes I like to make 3D games. Or I like to mix the two together and have 2D elements and 3D elements within the same game. And Godot keeps the process of making 2D and 3D games pretty similar. A lot of it is the same process. And Godot just comes with so much ready-made stuff for building games, and they're steady improving Godot. Plus, I like that Godot is completely free. Now, Unity is a game engine too, and it is a very strong game engine that many people use. And Unity do a lot more things than Godot because it's been out longer and you have more people contributing to it. But going back to Godot, I myself like free or cheap game engines. That is, I like game engines that are either free or cost less than $200. And then after I pay, I don't like to have to worry about online clouds or anything like that. So going back to Godot, that's why I like Godot too. I also like Godot because it is lightweight. Godot uses megabytes instead of gigabytes, and I keep Godot all on my USB drive that costs about $8 at Walmart. In developing games from my USB drive, I can develop my games anywhere, on any computer, and wherever I develop my games, I don't have to install anything on anybody's computer, nor alter anybody's computer. Thus, with Godot, I can work in the library, in the classroom, at my friend's house, or anywhere, and I don't have to install anything on their computer. And another thing I like about Godot is I tend to like the code-based game engines. That is, there's a place for codeless game engines like Construct and Coppercube and game engines like those. But if somebody asks me, I personally like the coding route, and I always say that the coding route is the best route. Because whenever you get deeper and deeper into game development, being able to code can be an important aspect for you to really create and optimize the effects that you want. And the tool sets that I use obviously don't have to be completely code-based, but I like to have that option. I feel like I tend to learn more. I get to enhance my skills as an overall game developer. I just enjoy coding, and when I'm kind of old school. And for those who are getting started with learning game development, I think that coding shouldn't be something to be afraid of. Even I don't consider myself a perfect programmer, but once you learn a little bit of coding, you could do great things with it. Coding is like it's a transferable skill. Once you learn coding, you can learn under game engines faster, and it can be a catalyst for you to enter not just game development, but other fields of programming like web development, where there are lots of jobs. I know people talk about C#, C++, JavaScript, Java, Python, and I programmed in all those. But I remember I started out in Blitz Basic and was able to pick up web development immediately just after just learning that. I was able to build web pages like almost the first day I tried it. So that's one of the benefits of kind of going the coding route. That's why I recommend it. That's why I think it's good. So going back to Godot again, I like that I can build my games in 2D and 3D, and you can build low poly assets within Godot, and you can optimize your animations. And I like the code base of Godot, the GD script. I mean, visual programming is also an option in Godot, and I never used the visual programming yet, but Godot has and visual programming as an option as well. So it's just like kind of like an all-inclusive game engine that has a lot of stuff under the hood. Now, another tool I like using is AppGameKit. AppGameKit was developed by an organization called Game Creators. And AppGameKit is an excellent choice for those who like to simply code their own games. Like me, AppGameKit uses BASIC, which is one of my favorite programming languages. Basic is, again, my home language where I started out. Basic means beginners, all-purpose instruction symbolic code. AppGameKit has a C++ side. That's an option too. But I tend to stick with the basic side. I like the old school feel. And a lot of people talk down on Basic and think it's an outdated language, but not me. Basic works wonders for me. And I like that Basic is simple, and I like that I don't have to worry about brackets nor indentations. So that's one thing I like about Basic. Basic is free and liberal, and that's what I tend to like. I like to be able to just code my games and not worry about it. And Basic style language has been around even before Unity, Godot, and before all those other game development tools had got off the ground. And I have been using Basic style languages way before those other tool sets. Like I said above, I started out with Blitz Basic, where I started out with no coding background at all. I didn't even have a lot of math skills either. Even I picked up Blitz Basic within a week. After that, in my search to learn more about programming, I started off with Blitz Basic, but then I went off to learn another programming language called Just Basic. And then I dabbled in another programming language called Liberty Basic, and then Free Basic. So I've been working with like a lot of basic type language, the beginner, all-purpose, symbolic instruction code. So I work with many basic programming languages. I mean, I've toyed with JavaScript and Java and other languages and made games in those too. But then, guess what? I ended up coming back to basic style tools like MonkeyX, which now known as Cerberus-X. And when they discontinued Blitz Basic, well, that's when I came to AppGameKit. That's a little bit of history about my programming. That's another reason I use AppGameKit. And in AppGameKit, like Godot, I can work in 2D and 3D. And with AppGameKit, you can make your games in the basic language and deploy your game to various devices, including desktop, mobile phone, and HTML, so that you can deploy your game onto the web. Now, AppGameKit has a classic version, which is completely coding, and it doesn't come with the scene editor. The classic version, you have to buy the scene editor separately, and the scene editor is in 2D. But there is the AfghanKid Studio, which costs from $50 to $99, depending on what time of year or if they have deals going on. So the AfghanKid prices can vary. But like I said, what I like about AfghanKid is you can just pay one-time fee and be done with it. You know, unlike Unity, you might have to subscribe to their cloud and all that stuff. But with AfghanKid, I bought the studio version back when it was about $40. Back when AfghanKid Studio was in its alpha stage. So I got a really good deal on AfghanKid Studio, and they usually have deals like that from time to time. So it's pretty cheap. Now, the Studio AfghanKid version comes with a 2D scene editor for those who need that, even though there are some ways around making games without a scene editor. And AfghanKid Studios is backwards compatible with AfghanKid Classic. That is, AfghanKid Studio is just an upgrade from the AfghanKid Classic. I would say AfghanKid is already great enough, and they have a 2D scene editor for those who need that. But I'd say an official 3D scene editor would really put AfghanKit out in orbit and make it even more astronomically great. And so that's just one thing I wish they would eventually make for this game development tool set. But anyway, AfghanKit is something that I use, especially when I want to code games. I have never went wrong with AfghanKit. And coding my games was something that I did way before all this other stuff came out. My next tool set that I like is GDev. Now, I did speak of code-based game engines even just a second ago, and I love those, but GDev is another one. GDev is made solely for 2D game development. It has visual programming. In GDev, you're still coding, but you're doing it by clicking on different icons that do different things. It's non-traditional, but I like it. The reason that I like GDev is the visual programming allows me to make games very fast. In GDev, you create an object and tell GDev what you want to do with that object by going through a list of options and clicking on things. And me making a game in GDev it's like click, 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 and then I put in the coordinate numbers of various things and tell the speeds of objects that need to move around the screen, and bam, I have my game done. And it's usually quick. Now, there's another game engine like GDev that's called Construct 3, and it's like GDev with a different interface. I mean, it's very similar to GDev, and many people use Construct, but I like that GDev is free. I'm one of them cheapskates, so I like cheap and free, or anything under $200. The GDev developers made it so that you could code your games in a traditional text way and you can expand GDev as you will using JavaScript. So that's one option with GDev. And then like Godot and AppGameKit, you could deploy your game to various devices such as the web, desktop, mobile, after you finish making your game. So GDev is a wonderful and awesome tool, and this is another game engine that I like using. The last one that I usually use is Cerberus-X. Now, Cerberus-X is one of those lesser known game development tools. You know, it's not as famous as Unity, Unreal, Godot, GDev, Construct, Coppercube, many other game engines. I don't know why, because it's been around for a long time, but it is very good and it needs to be more known. Now, Cerberus-X was made by the makers of Blitz Basic. That's why I don't understand why it's not more well known. It came before a lot of recent game engines. This is actually where I programmed one of my first completed games a very long time ago, back in 2009. This is where a lot of game developers got their start. In Cerberus-X, you can do 2D and some limited 3D too. It is where you could make your game in another basic style language and deploy your games to various devices like the desktop, to the web, and mobile phone. Now, Cerberus-X is always in active development. They also have a very active community where if you have any questions about how to develop your game, you could post your code on their forum and someone will usually answer your questions. And they have some expert coders on that site. This is actually how I learned more about programming. And on the Cerberus-X site, I've even asked questions about other languages on their site and general programming questions. And there was always somebody who could answer my question with great detail on whatever my question was. And if you deal with Cerberus-X long enough, you will get pretty good. I can attest to that. And I'm saying this based on my own experience. That's why I recommend this. Cerberus-X used to be called MonkeyX, but now MonkeyX has been rebranded to this name. And so it's now called Cerberus-X. This is also completely free. And I made a tutorial that showcases how to make games in Cerberus-X. I'll leave a link below. In the tutorial, I showcases Cerberus-X's 2D and Cerberus-X's limited 3D side too. And one more thing about Cerberus-X is you could code your game in the Cerberus-X basic language and actually target AppGameKit's API. Isn't that something? I just talked about AppGameKit, didn't I? And Cerberus-X and AppGameKit work together. So that's another thing I like about Cerberus-X. It works hand in hand with another one of my favorite game development tool sets, AppGameKit. So those are the things that I use for programming and making games, things that help me along my journey as I make games more and more. These are my favorite tools. Till next time, thanks. Bye.